Hello and welcome to Animal Ethics in Action, a YouTube channel that aims to look at current affairs, the sort of things that we read, think, talk about, from the point of view of non-human animals. I'm Natalia Duran. I'm involved in the running of 3 animal organizations, Urban Squirrels, Animal Aid and Pan-Orthodox Concern for Animals. And I am a bit of a philosopher among amateurs and amateur among philosophers. I like to dig just below the surface of current affairs with a philosophical spade. So if this approach interests you, also here goes. The news item I have chosen for today is this. Beavers have built their first dam for 400 years in Exmoor in the west of England, as reported a few days ago by the BBC. Beavers became extinct in this country in the 16th century. They were hunted to extinction, basically. They were hunted for their fur and flesh even, and their secretions, castoreum. But in the last couple of decades, they were reintroduced in Scotland, where they are successful, and also a few illegal and unplanned introductions took place in England as well. It was known on social media as beaver bombings, basically bombing the countryside with beavers. But this introduction in Exmoor is legal. It is being conducted by the National Trust, and they started in January, obviously doing well. The beavers are building their dam. The idea behind the project is to manage rivers and streams in a more natural way as part of flood defenses. The animal ethics issue that underlies this piece of news is rewilding. There are 2 types of rewilding. One, when you just leave land out of production to do what it wants. And 2 is when new species are introduced back into the territory where they became extinct. The first type of rewilding was instantiated in a very tragic and dramatic way by the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. It took place over 30 years ago on the territory of the former Soviet Union. The nuclear reactor affected had to be encased in concrete and buried underground, and people can never again settle there because the levels of radiation are just too high. But animals did move back in, and they're thriving, both prey and predator species, and more are moving in from neighboring lands. And surely that is a sobering thought, that if we just leave nature alone, even in the worst possible ecological state, that of nuclear catastrophe, it can still resurrect itself and thrive. The second type of rewilding, reintroduction of species, is of course instantiated by the Beaver Project. It has been very successful because, well, the beavers are doing well, and well, why shouldn't they? They're rodents. Rodents know how to survive. Well, also beavers are, they're kind of an interesting species because they're closer to humans than to other animals in the way they manage their habitat. If a habitat is bad, a plant dies, an animal adapts, a human changes the habitat to suit their needs, and so does a beaver by the looks of it. And of course, beaver activity is very, very good for the environment. Beavers, well, they build their dams, they create pools, and they make the river meander and branch out, which prevents flooding further down the stream, can save homes from being flooded. Beavers also prevent, the twin evil of flood, which is a drought. They also protect topsoil. They obviously increase biodiversity. They keep the water clean. So it looks like a win-win, win-win-win situation. Who can possibly object to it? Well, this is not a rhetorical question. Who can object to it? The answer is farmers and me. But before you start throwing rotten tomatoes at the computer screen, let me explain about the farmers. Basically, farmers like the rivers to be straight because that maximizes land, agricultural land on either side. And when beavers create their pools, they can take up the land that farmers want for grazing. Also, beavers can fell some trees that the farmers don't want to be felled. So basically what beavers do is very, very good for the environment, not so good always for the farmer's budget. And that is why whenever reintroductions are discussed, it seems that the main opposition comes from farming communities. And then it gets even worse. Once the animals are reintroduced, if they're successful, farmers can start calling for the killing of these animals. And in the case of beavers in Scotland, last year Scottish authorities gave a license to kill 1/5 of the beaver population. You just think about it. The animals have just been introduced, they are doing well, they are undeniably good for the environment, and yet they're killed already. And that is why I, as an animal rights advocate, have my reservations, well, for all it's worth, about this type of rewilding, about reintroductions. We just don't seem to be ready for this as a society. The animals are just not safe. The thing is, animal interests do come into conflict with human interests, as the farmer and the beaver situation shows. And at the moment there exists a mindset in society that will always absolutely prioritize human interests. If an animal interferes with a human's economic activity, or even leisure, golf or gardening, the animal dies. And as long as this mindset persists, until we have rewilded the mind, to use the expression I used in the description of the video, no animal is safe really. How can you bring more animals into a situation like this? There is a reason why these animals became extinct in the first place. There was habitat loss, yes, but also always there is an element of human persecution. And in the case of beavers, it was entirely human persecution that made them go extinct. And it is a working definition of madness, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. If we introduce those new animals, where is the guarantee that they will not be hunted again? And that is just the humble beaver. What if we introduce apex predators, iconic species such as the wolf, the lynx, the bear? The thing is, there are people in our society who take pleasure from killing animals. And it seems that the more iconic, as it were, the species, or even the larger the animal, the more pleasure they obtain from the killing. And really, for as long as this attitude persists, well, these animals, apex predators, are just going to be very, very attractive for hunters. So how can we rewild the mind? How can we change this mindset? The Beaver Project in Exmoor, well, they have found a solution. Landowners and farmers are going to be paid to have the beavers on their land. And this is good as far as it goes, because at least, the animals are not going to be killed. But it doesn't really address the underlying problem. It does not change the mindset. What does change the mindset is the vegan movement, ethical veganism anyway. It addresses the mindset in two ways. A, it kind of places more value on the life of an individual animal. Well, cows are not going extinct, but it's still not right to kill the cows. And B, veganism rebalances human and animal interests. We may like cheese and bacon, but does that mean that animals should die for it? In the last few years, we have seen the rise of the vegan movement, but it is still not the dominant mindset. And for as long as that situation endures, until we have rewilded the mind more thoroughly, I believe it is safer to stick to the first type of rewilding, basically leaving land out of production and letting nature do its own thing. It is less dramatic than reintroductions, but a lot safer. Well, this is it for today. Thank you for listening. Please comment, subscribe, like if you feel like it. Many, many thanks to the 40 people or plus who have subscribed already, and hopefully see you next week.